Hi class, welcome to the Understanding the Fieldwork Assignment Theory to Observation. This video will help you understand how to do your fieldwork in the course. The fieldwork together in all its parts, which we'll discuss, is worth 25% of your grade. It's due May 7th. It may be submitted up to 1 week late with a 10% point penalty, but it may not be revised. Everything I'm going to show you is on the course site. If you look in the Major Assignments folder, you'll see all the major assignments in the course. The very last one is the folder for the fieldwork. If you click on that folder and go in, you'll see a variety of resources as well as the link to submit the assignment. You'll see the instructions and the rubric that we're going to be going over here. You'll see an exemplar of what an A paper looks like. This is a paper from a former student during a former semester. The name and identifying information has been removed, but it's there to guide you in terms of what you should be doing with your paper. You see this video, Understanding the Fieldwork Assignment, something called a Fieldwork Observation Plan, and although you can't see it at the bottom of this page, you'll see the link to submit. Let's open up the instructions and begin to discuss the assignment. As I said, it's worth 25% of your grade, and that includes an observation plan, the paper that you're going to write on your observation, and your chalk and wire fieldwork log. The first thing you need to do is to make arrangements to observe a classroom for a minimum of 6 hours. And you're going to fill out and submit a fieldwork observation plan by March 5th. Now this fieldwork observation plan I'll go over later, but it's worth 5% of the 25%. So 5% of your coursework grade comes from your plan for where you observe and what you plan to do. Once you receive approval, then you're going to go into the classroom and observe for a minimum of 6 hours. Now you might be wondering why 6 hours when the requirement is 10 hours. Well, it's 6 hours of observation and 4 hours to plan and prepare and write your paper. You should choose a classroom that corresponds to your certification area. So for example, if you're math adolescent education, you should go into a math classroom somewhere in grades 7 to 12. You may observe in more than one classroom, but try not to go into too many classrooms because the fieldwork paper just becomes choppy. I'd say no more than 2 or 3 if you want to observe 2 or 3 hours in one and 2 or 3 hours in another. Don't go in to do your observation until probably late March, and it'll become apparent why later in this lecture. But basically you have to be able to understand the theories before you can apply them to what you're seeing in the classroom. You should not observe in any classroom where you're a teacher or a teaching assistant, for the simple reason that you can't observe and teach at the same time. Throughout your fieldwork experiences here in the education program at Mercy, you should be going to different kinds of classrooms and different kinds of schools. So your electronic portfolio that you're building through Chalk and Wire should contain schools that are affluent and schools that are high needs. You should be observing different grade levels. You should be observing urban schools, maybe suburban, and even if you can get to one, a rural school. An important thing to remember is that the state requires us to have a separate fieldwork observation for every course. So you may not use the same 6 hours that you use for this course for another course. It has to be a separate observation, and vice versa. You may not use a separate observation from another course for this course. If I find out that you've done that, you'll receive a 0. Please note, excuse me, there's a permission to observe form on the course in the Fieldwork folder that you can print out and give it to a teacher or administrator. And basically that just says this is a valid assignment. It's signed by the Dean of the School of Education, and you give it to whoever you need to give it to. You don't need to return it to me. So what is this assignment about? Well, you're going to observe children and teachers in the classrooms, and you will not interact with them when the lesson is occurring. You'll take field notes and then relate your observations to 3 of the following learning or motivational theories. So we've already talked about Piaget and Vygotsky in this course. These are some other, the rest of these are other theories that you might find interesting that we'll be talking about later in the course. You must use 3 of these 6 theories, or you must obtain permission to use a different theory. You're going to complete your observations and then write a minimum of 4 to 6 page double-spaced paper with at least 3 citation and matching references. Your paper will include the following in outline. The bolded text here that you see, they make good headings in your paper. Remember those centered headings we learned about in APA format. So if you just want to use these, that helps organize your paper. Context of the observation, lesson activities you observed, etc. Let's go through each one of these sections to see what should be in it. So under the context of your observation, you need to write the date, the dates that you observed, the times that you observed, your school, the grade level, the teacher you observed, the location, and the number of students, approximately. In the section about lesson activities, you're going to give a few paragraphs that talk about the lesson or lessons that you observed. This should not be the bulk of the paper, but it should be in enough detail to give the reader a sense of what was going on in the classroom. A description of the 3 theories. So this is where you're going to describe each of the theories. For example, if you're talking about Piaget's theory of cognitive development, you'll describe what Piaget thought about how learning occurs, and perhaps a little bit about each of the 6 stages. This is a good place to contain your 3 citations. One of your citations can be the textbook, and then you'll need to go find 2 other citations. How theories relate is a particularly important part of this assignment. So this is a discussion of how the activities you observe in the lesson relate to 3 specific learning theories. So you don't have to give me 3 lessons for each theory. You have to give me 3 theories and 3 ways that they relate. You can give me, for example, how one place in a lesson related to Piaget, and you can give me how one place in a lesson related to Vygotsky. You only need to write about 3 theories in total. This is a very important part, as I said, and this should be a large part of your paper, because it's through this part that I see that you really understand the theories and the strategies that go along with them. Let's take an example. Later, we'll learn about Skinner's operant conditioning theory, which has to do with how you can use reinforcers and punishers to either increase behavior or decrease bad behavior in the classroom. If you see a teacher using reward stickers, that would be an example of Skinner's operant conditioning. So you would describe what the teacher did and how it relates to that theory. The next section is a deep reflection. This is a description of what you have learned. This is different than a conclusion. a conclusion would say, in conclusion, I enjoyed my observations, yada, 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 the end. But instead, I'm asking you to reflect or think about what you learned in this assignment. Think about what you didn't know prior to going in, what surprised you about what you saw in the classroom, what misconceptions you might have had that you cleared up, what kinds of things about theory and strategies did you take away that you could use in your own classroom, and more. I encourage students to write this at the end and to write it over a couple of days and give it some thought. You'll wind up with a much more meaningful reflection than if you just rush something. The final section is references for any citations that you have. Remember, we don't call this section bibliography, we call it references. You're going to proof your paper and then submit your paper to Blackboard. You don't have to upload it to Chalk and Wire, but you will complete your fieldwork form on Chalk and Wire. If you look at the last pages of the instructions, you'll see the rubric that I will use to grade your assignment. Basically, it's the sections we just talked about. Did you explain the context in depth? Did you describe the specific lesson activities in depth? Did you describe 3 or more learning or motivation theories? The last part of the rubric, did you relate the activities to the theories well? And you might notice that little point value there in each cell means I'm weighting that section more heavily than the other sections. Did you describe what you learned in a reflection? Did you have citations and references, at least 3 citation and matching references? Did you write an accurate paper in terms of grammar, spelling, APA? And finally, did you submit all parts? Remember, there are 3 parts to this. There's the fieldwork paper itself, and the fieldwork log, and the observation plan, which is due before this assignment. Here's a shot of the permission to observe form that I mentioned. This is in the fieldwork folder. You just print it out, fill it out, and give it to whomever needs to see it to validate this assignment. Here's the fieldwork observation plan. This will be due in a few weeks on March 5th, and it may be turned in up to a week late with a 10% point penalty. So you're going to give me the name of the school, the address, the grade levels, and answer some basic questions about your observation. Here's the title page from the exemplar that I've uploaded to the fieldwork folder. So I do encourage you to go in, take a look at that, and see what an A paper might look like. That's it. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at nhalbrenner@mercy.edu. Thanks, everybody.